My mom played a clip of me talking in my sleep about a boy I liked, then made me explain my impure thoughts to an empty chair at a family meeting. When I asked her why she was doing this, she smiled and said, "Because secrets make sinners, and I'm saving your soul." I just stared at her. That was a year ago. Yesterday, she tried to swallow a USB drive in front of a courtroom full of strangers. What's the worst way someone invaded your privacy? My mother installed recording devices in every room of our house because she believed that unmonitored conversations were how children became criminals, and she'd play back our private moments at mandatory family meetings where we had to explain every word. Mom had always been paranoid about what we said when she wasn't around. She started by demanding detailed summaries of every conversation we had at school, making us reenact discussions with friends while she took notes. She'd quiz us separately to see if our stories matched. When my older brother got caught lying about a conversation with his girlfriend, Mom lectured us for 3 hours about how secrets destroyed families. She genuinely believed that every crime started with one unmonitored conversation. When I was 14, Mom announced she'd found the solution. She showed us the tiny microphones that could pick up whispers from across a room. She made it sound reasonable at first, saying it would help us communicate better and resolve conflicts. But then she explained the full system. Every room would be monitored constantly, all audio saved to her computer. Every Sunday after church, we'd have family meetings where she'd play concerning conversations and analyze them together. Within a week, our house became a surveillance state. Mom would sit at her computer for hours with headphones, listening to recordings and taking notes. At our first family meeting, she played a recording of me venting to my sister about a teacher. "Let's discuss why Megan feels comfortable using such violent language," she said, replaying the part where I said I wanted to strangle my teacher. She made me stand up and apologize to an empty chair representing my teacher while my siblings watched. The recordings destroyed any trust between us. My sister stopped talking to me after Mom played a conversation where I'd called her annoying. My brother moved into the garage thinking it might not be bugged, but Mom had put devices there too. We learned to communicate in writing, passing notes that we'd immediately flush, but Mom noticed the silence and added more rules. We had to have at least 10 minutes of conversation per room per day, or she'd assume we were hiding something. I started losing my mind from the constant surveillance. I'd lie in bed at night, afraid to even breathe too loud because Mom might analyze my breathing patterns. When I talked in my sleep about a boy I liked, Mom played it at our family meeting and made me explain my impure, unconscious thoughts. I developed a stutter from the pressure of knowing every word was recorded. Mom said the stutter was proof the system was working. One night, I found her recording device in my room and destroyed it with a hammer. Mom's response was swift. She installed new devices hidden inside light fixtures and vents where we couldn't reach them. She added cameras to catch us destroying equipment. Then she started the punishment recordings. If we broke a rule, she'd lock us in our rooms and play audio of our worst moments on repeat. I had to listen to myself crying for 10 hours straight. The sound of my own misery became torture. So then I tried staying silent, communicating only in nods and gestures. But Mom hired a speech therapist to force me to talk, saying my silence was self-harm. When I still wouldn't speak, she threatened to have me institutionalized for selective mutism. I had no choice but to perform conversations, talking about nothing just to fill her recording quota. My brother snapped during a family meeting where Mom was playing a recording of him crying after a breakup. He grabbed her laptop and smashed it against the wall. Mom called the police, saying he'd assaulted her. When officers arrived, she played edited recordings that made it sound like he'd been planning violence for weeks. They arrested him while Mom sobbed about her dangerous son. After that, Mom started live streaming our family meetings to her church group. She'd play our most humiliating recordings to strangers who'd pray for our souls. She hired someone to transcribe thousands of hours of audio, creating searchable databases of every word we'd said. We weren't her children anymore. We were subjects in her surveillance experiment. Child services showed up after someone from Mom's church reported the live streams. When the social worker asked to speak with us privately, Mom said that was impossible. All conversations had to be recorded. The social worker asked to hear recent recordings, and Mom proudly played clips she thought showed good parenting. Instead, they heard hours of children begging for privacy, crying about surveillance, developing anxiety disorders. They removed us that day, but Mom had prepared for this. As we packed our things, she revealed her final recording. She'd been wearing a wire during every interaction with social services, every court hearing. "I have 50 hours of audio," she said, smiling. "Conversations where you all lie about me, where you admit to things that could get you in serious trouble." She held up a USB drive. "This goes to judges, police, your new foster families, unless you come home voluntarily." The social worker reached for it, but Mom stepped back. "I've already uploaded copies everywhere," she said. "One click and everyone hears what these children really are." My sister started crying. My brother looked defeated. The social worker was calling for backup, and Mom stood there, finally holding all the power, with years of our lives recorded and ready to weaponize. "So," she said, her finger hovering over her phone, "are you coming home, or should I start sending files?" The social worker stepped between us and Mom, her voice steady but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to put the phone down. These children are under state protection now." Mom's smile widened. She pressed a button on her phone, and immediately my stomach dropped. The social worker's phone buzzed, then another buzz from her colleague's pocket. Mom had sent something to everyone. "Check your emails," Mom said calmly. "I've included transcripts with timestamps. Everything these children have said about wanting to hurt themselves, hurt others, their substance experimentation discussions, their plans to run away, it's all there." My hand started shaking. I knew exactly which conversations she meant. The time I'd told my brother I wanted to disappear. The joke my sister made about stealing Mom's sleeping pills. Every dark thought we'd shared and what we thought were private moments. The social worker glanced at her phone, then back at Mom. "Ma'am, recordings obtained through illegal surveillance aren't admissible as evidence, and threatening children with them is criminal." Mom laughed, not her fake church laugh, but the real one that made my skin crawl. "I'm their mother. Recording my own children in my own home isn't illegal. I have every right to monitor them for their safety." She pulled out a folder from her purse, spreading papers across the coffee table. Legal documents, custody agreements, printed emails from lawyers. She'd been preparing for this moment for years. "I've consulted with 3 different attorneys," she continued. "In this state, parents can record their minor children. Every device was registered, every recording legally obtained. You want to remove them? Fine. But every foster family, every group home, every judge will hear these recordings. They'll know exactly what kind of children they're dealing with." My brother stepped forward, fists clenched. The social worker grabbed his arm, holding him back. Mom noticed and smiled wider. See? Violence. Just like in recording 847 from last March. Should I play that one? Where he describes in detail what he'd like to do to me? My sister was sobbing harder now, covering her ears. I wanted to comfort her but couldn't move. My legs felt frozen to the spot. The social worker's colleague was making phone calls, speaking in hushed tones about emergency placements and legal consultation. More people kept arriving. 2 more social workers, a supervisor, someone from the legal department. Our living room filled with strangers while Mom sat calmly in her chair, phone in hand like a weapon. The recordings are organized by date and topic, Mom explained to the growing audience. I have folders for each child. Megan's self-harm discussions, Nathan's anger issues, Tara's eating disorder development. Would you like me to start with the most recent ones or go chronologically? Nathan, Tara. She was using our full names now, the ones she only used when we were in serious trouble. My stutter got worse just hearing them. The legal department representative, a woman in a gray suit, stepped forward. Mrs. Davidson, I understand you believe you're protecting your children, but threatening them with these recordings constitutes emotional abuse. We can have you arrested right now. Mom tilted her head. Arrest me? While my children are having mental health crises? Look at these transcripts. They need help, not abandonment. I'm the only one who truly understands their issues because I've heard every word, every cry for help. She pulled out another stack of papers. These are my notes from 5 years of recordings. Behavior patterns, warning signs, intervention strategies. No foster family will have this level of insight. You're condemning them to fail without their mother's documentation. The supervisor whispered something to the legal representative. They moved to the corner, discussing in low voices. Mom watched them like a cat watching mice. I've also sent copies to Pastor Williams, Principal Henderson, and Dr. Lopez at the psychiatric facility, Mom added casually. They're expecting my children for evaluation if you remove them from my care. The recordings prove they need immediate intervention. My brother broke free from the social worker's grip and lunged for Mom's phone. The way this mother uses safety and protection to justify her surveillance makes me wonder what her own childhood was like. Something must have broken her ability to understand normal family trust. She pulled it back just in time, and he crashed into the coffee table instead. Papers scattered everywhere. Mom immediately started narrating into her phone. Tuesday, 4:47 p.m. Nathan attempted to assault me and steal my property. Multiple witnesses present. This follows pattern established in recordings 592 through 611. The social workers restrained Nathan while he struggled and shouted. Mom kept recording, documenting every word he said. She was building her case in real time. I want all recording devices removed from this home immediately, the supervisor finally announced. This is a crime scene now. Mom stood up slowly. Of course, but I should mention that removing the devices won't delete the cloud backups. 5 years of audio, all safely stored on servers in 3 different states. My attorney has the access codes. She walked to her computer, typing something quickly. I'm sending the master file list to everyone now. 3,000 hours of audio. Every conversation, every whisper, every nightmare. These children's entire lives, documented and indexed. The email notification sounds filled the room as everyone's phones buzzed simultaneously. Mom had weaponized our childhood, turned our growth and pain into ammunition. We need to leave now, the supervisor decided. Children, gather your essential belongings. We have emergency placements ready. As we moved toward our rooms, Mom called out one last time. Remember, everything you say from now on goes on record too. Foster families have to document incidents. Group homes record therapy sessions. The court will analyze every word. The surveillance never really ends, does it? I grabbed my backpack with shaking hands, shoving in random clothes. In my desk drawer, I found the notebook where we'd written messages to each other. The only communication Mom couldn't record. I flipped through pages of our silent conversations, our desperate attempts to stay human under her surveillance. My sister appeared in my doorway, eyes red and puffy. She held up her own notebook, and I saw she'd been thinking the same thing. We'd need these where we were going. They were proof that we'd fought back, that we'd found ways to exist despite the recordings. Down the hall, Nathan was throwing things into a garbage bag, muttering under his breath. I knew Mom was probably recording the sounds, adding them to her vast archive of our lives. The social worker assigned to me, a younger woman with kind eyes, helped me zip my backpack. It's going to be okay, she whispered. We've dealt with situations like this before, but I knew she was wrong. They'd never dealt with someone like Mom, someone who'd turned love into surveillance and parenting into espionage, someone who had 5 years of our lives ready to weaponize at any moment. As we walked back to the living room, Mom was showing the legal representative something on her laptop. Charts, graphs, analytics of our conversation patterns. She'd turned us into data, into subjects in her twisted experiment. Before you take them, Mom announced, you should know about the sewer slide attempts. All documented in the recordings. Megan's was last summer. Tara's was during Christmas break. Nathan has made threats monthly since age 15. Will their foster families be equipped to handle this? None of it was true. But how could we prove that? She had recordings of every joke, every dark moment, every expression of normal teenage frustration. Taken out of context, played selectively, they could paint any picture she wanted. The supervisor's face had gone pale. We'll need to place them in therapeutic foster homes then, possibly separate ones for safety. No, Tara cried out. We need to stay together. Mom clicked her tongue. Recording 1263 suggests Tara has unhealthy codependency with her siblings. Separation might be therapeutic. I watched my family falling apart in real time, destroyed by Mom's twisted interpretation of our own words. Every plea for help would be used against us. Every moment of weakness weaponized. The social workers started moving us toward the door. Mom followed, still recording on her phone, still narrating our destruction. Tuesday, 5:15 p.m. Children leaving with state custody. Megan showing signs of dissociation. Tara exhibiting anxiety symptoms. Nathan displaying aggressive body language. Recommend immediate psychiatric evaluation for all 3. As we reached the front door, she played one final recording. My voice, younger and happier, telling her I loved her after she'd tucked me in, before the surveillance started, before she'd turned our home into a prison. I have thousands of these too, she said softly. Happy moments, loving conversations, proof that I was a good mother before you all turned against me. The court will hear both sides. The door closed behind us, but I could still see her through the window. She was already back at her computer, headphones on, listening to our lives and taking notes. The car ride to the emergency placement felt like another recording session. I sat between Tara and Nathan in the back seat, our social workers driving us to separate locations. Tara gripped my hand so tight her nails dug into my palm. Nathan stared out the window, jaw clenched, knuckles white against his knees. The social worker explained we'd stay in temporary homes for 72 hours while they arranged proper placements. Tara would go to a family specializing in younger children, Nathan to a group home for teens with behavioral issues, me to an emergency foster mother who lived alone. We pulled up to Tara's placement first, a yellow house with a tire swing in the yard. The foster mother came out smiling, but Tara wouldn't let go of my hand. The social workers had to physically separate us. Tara screamed my name as they carried her inside. The sound reminded me of Mom's punishment recordings. Nathan's group home looked like a converted office building. Gray walls, security cameras, buzzers on every door. He grabbed my shoulder before getting out, pressing something into my hand, a folded piece of paper. I shoved it in my pocket before the social workers noticed. My placement was last, a small apartment above a bakery. The foster mother, Mrs. Van, had kind eyes but kept glancing at her phone. I knew Mom's emails had reached her. She'd already heard the recordings, already formed opinions about what kind of child I was. Mrs. Van showed me to a bedroom that smelled like vanilla and old books. She explained the house rules while I unpacked. No locked doors, no electronics after 9. Check-ins every hour. It felt like trading one surveillance system for another. That night, I unfolded Nathan's note. He'd drawn a map of Mom's computer system, passwords he'd figured out, locations of backup drives. At the bottom, he'd written instructions for accessing the cloud storage. He'd been planning this for months. I memorized every detail, then flushed the paper down the toilet, just like we'd done at home. Mrs. Van knocked on the bathroom door, asking if I was okay. The surveillance never stopped. The next morning brought our first family court hearing. They transported us separately, but I saw Tara in the hallway. Her eyes were puffy from crying. Nathan had a bruise on his cheek. He shook his head when I tried to ask about it. Mom arrived with 3 lawyers. She wore her church dress and carried a briefcase full of transcripts. She'd printed thousands of pages, highlighting the worst moments in yellow. The stack of papers towered over the judge's desk. The judge, an older woman with gray hair, listened as Mom's lawyers presented their case. They played recordings on a laptop, our voices filling the courtroom. Tara begging for privacy. Nathan expressing anger about the surveillance. Me talking about wanting to disappear. Mom sat there taking notes, occasionally whispering to her lawyers. She'd catch my eye and smile. That same smile from when she'd first shown us the recording devices. Like this was all for our own good. Our court-appointed lawyer tried to object to the recordings, but Mom's team had done their research. In our state, parents could record their minor children. The surveillance was legal. The emotional torture was just parenting. The judge ordered a full investigation. Social workers would interview us separately. Psychological evaluations would be conducted. Mom would maintain her parental rights during the process. She could still send recordings to anyone she wanted. After court, they took us back to our placements. I spent the afternoon with Mrs. Van, who kept asking careful questions about my home life. I knew she was documenting everything for her reports. Everyone was always documenting. That evening, Mrs. Van let me use her computer for homework. I waited until she was in the kitchen, then quickly accessed Nathan's cloud storage information. My hands shook as I logged in. Thousands of audio files appeared on screen, organized by date and subject. I found folders labeled with our names. Inside mine were subfolders: Megan's lies, Megan's violent thoughts, Megan's mental health issues. Each contained hundreds of recordings taken out of context, but Nathan had created his own folders too. Mom's admissions, Mom's contradictions, evidence of abuse. He'd been collecting counter evidence for months, recording her recording us. I downloaded everything to a USB drive Mrs. Van had left on the desk. My heart pounded as the files transferred. This was our only chance to fight back with Mom's own weapons. Mrs. Van returned just as I finished. I quickly closed the windows and pretended to work on homework. She studied my face but didn't say anything. Maybe she understood more than she let on. The next day brought individual interviews with social workers. They asked about the recordings, about our home life, about Mom's surveillance system. Mom's chess game reveals itself brilliantly. She turned childhood into evidence and motherhood into a court case, complete with timestamps and exhibit numbers that would make any lawyer jealous of her dedication. I tried to explain how the constant monitoring had destroyed us, but words felt inadequate. How could they understand what it felt like to have every breath analyzed? The social worker took notes on a laptop. The clicking keys reminded me of Mom typing up her transcripts. I wondered if this interview would become another file in someone's system, another recording to be played back and analyzed. Tara's interview was after mine. I passed her in the hallway, and she grabbed my arm. Her foster family had been playing Mom's recordings, she whispered. They wanted to understand her issues. She'd heard herself crying on repeat, just like Mom's punishment sessions. Nathan's interview went worse. He'd refused to speak at first, and they'd marked him as uncooperative. The group home had already filed 3 incident reports about his aggressive behavior. Mom's narrative was becoming reality. That afternoon brought our psychological evaluations. Different offices, different doctors, but the same questions. They'd all received Mom's recordings and transcripts. The doctor evaluating me kept referring to specific conversations, asking me to explain context Mom had deliberately removed. I tried to tell him about the surveillance system, about the mandatory family meetings, about the punishment recordings. He nodded and typed notes, occasionally glancing at his phone. I wondered if Mom was sending him new files in real time. The evaluation lasted 3 hours. By the end, I felt like Mom was in the room with us, her presence embedded in every recording they'd reviewed. Even here, she controlled the narrative. Back at Mrs. Van's apartment, I found a package on my bed. No return address, but I recognized Mom's handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a note. In case you forgot what you really are. I plugged it into Mrs. Van's computer when she wasn't looking. The drive contained a single folder, Megan's greatest hits. 20 hours of my worst moments, edited together into a highlight reel of pain. Mom had weaponized my entire adolescence, but she'd made a mistake. The metadata on the files showed when they'd been edited, how clips had been cut and rearranged, evidence of her manipulation. I saved everything to my hidden drive. The next morning brought news that shattered our remaining hope. The judge had granted Mom supervised visitation rights. We'd have to see her twice a week at the Family Services Center. She could bring her recordings to show us therapeutic progress. Our first visitation was that afternoon. They brought us to a sterile room with cameras in every corner. Mom was already there, laptop open, recordings ready. She'd prepared a presentation about our behavioral patterns. She played clips showing how our issues had developed over time. Tara's anxiety increasing, Nathan's anger escalating, my depression worsening.